Throughout history, art has served as more than just a way to depict beauty. It has been a tool for controversy, challenging societal norms, political ideologies, and even the very nature of reality itself. Some artworks have stirred up debate not just for their content, but because they dared to question the world around them. These works of art shocked their audiences and changed the course of art history by pushing boundaries in unexpected and often unsettling ways. Today, we're exploring the top 25 most controversial artworks in history. At number 25, we have the Raft of Medusa by Théodore Géricault. This massive painting depicts the aftermath of a wreck of a French frigate off the coast of Senegal in 1816, where more than 100 men were abandoned on a raft. Géricault's decision to paint such a tragic and graphic scene was shocking in its time. The painting's visceral realism, with starving, dying men struggling to survive amid the wreckage, was unlike anything seen in academic art before. Beyond the raw emotional intensity of the scene, Géricault's painting is a direct commentary on political corruption. The shipwreck itself was a result of incompetence by French officials, and Géricault made sure to emphasize the theme of governmental failure. His highly detailed, almost photographic portrayal of the figures drew attention not only to their suffering, but to the human cost of political negligence, which really struck a chord in a France recovering from a revolution. Number 24 is The Persistence of Memory by Salvador Dalí. With its famous melting clocks draped across barren landscapes, Dalí's surreal masterpiece challenged conventional ideas about time and reality. The painting's eerie, dreamlike atmosphere was unsettling to many viewers when it first unveiled, as it seemed to defy all logic and order. At the heart of the painting is a sense of time slipping away, warping, and losing all significance. Dalí's piece was not just a visual anomaly. It represented a deeper philosophical questioning of human perception. Surrealism, as a movement, aimed to transcend the rational mind and explore the unconscious. The Persistence of Memory does just that, using distorted clocks and dreamlike imagery to suggest that time itself is a fluid concept, constantly changing in our subconscious. The work's impact is still felt today, as it challenges our understanding of reality itself. At number 23, we have The Great Wave off Kanagawa by Katsushika Hokusai. While this iconic woodblock print might seem like a peaceful, almost serene portrayal of a mighty wave, its underlying themes were slightly controversial for the time. The dynamic composition, the huge wave threatening to swallow the boats, and the small, quaint Mount Fuji in the background upend traditional Japanese art, which typically idealized nature's beauty. Hokusai's work emphasized the power and unpredictability of nature, evoking feelings of fear and awe. Hokusai's break from the conventions of Japanese woodblock printing was daring and controversial. This print, as part of his 36 Views of Mount Fuji series, symbolized the transient and volatile relationship between humans and nature, something rarely seen in traditional Japanese art. The work's global impact can be seen in the way it influenced Western art movements like Impressionism, where artists such as Monet and Van Gogh were inspired by Hokusai's dynamic compositions. At number 22, we have Guernica by Pablo Picasso. This large mural is Picasso's response to the bombing of the Spanish town of Guernica during the Spanish Civil War. The painting, rendered in stark black, white, and gray tones, captures the horrors of war, with screaming figures, twisted bodies, and burning buildings. Picasso's use of abstraction, rather than traditional realism, forces the viewer to focus on the emotional devastation of war, rather than on a specific narrative. What makes Guernica so controversial is not only its emotional power, but its political message. Picasso, a staunch anti-fascist, used the canvas to condemn the brutality of war. The surrealist imagery, while controversial in its own right, was a direct call to action, urging viewers to confront the inhumanity of armed conflict. Picasso's work has since become a symbol of the anti-war movement and one of the most important political statements in the history of art. Number 21 is Over the Top by John Nash, painted in 1918. Over the Top is one of the most harrowing depictions of World War I. John Nash, who served as a soldier in the war, created the painting based on his first-hand experiences. The scene captures British soldiers charging out of a trench into no man's land during the Battle of Cambrai in 1917, only to be met with near certain death. The stiff, almost puppet-like figures emphasize the mechanized slaughter of war, stripping away idealized notions of heroism and glory. The painting's stark realism and emotional detachment made it controversial, as it did not align with the romanticized portrayals of war often seen in classical art. Instead of showing noble sacrifice, Nash depicted the bleak, senseless loss of life. Over the Top remains one of the most powerful statements in British art, forcing viewers to confront the grim reality of World War I and its devastating human cost. Number 20 is The School of Athens by Raphael. This fresco, painted in the Vatican, is a masterpiece of Renaissance art. It depicts famous philosophers of the ancient world gathered in a grand architectural space. Perhaps not so controversial, but it did have some revolutionary themes. It blended classical philosophy with the newly emerging humanist ideals of the Renaissance. It placed intellectuals from different subjects together in an imagined space, reflecting the Renaissance's growing belief in human reason and scientific inquiry. Raphael's work is revolutionary not just for its visual brilliance, but for its ideas. The inclusion of ancient philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, alongside many other great thinkers, challenged the medieval worldview, which had emphasized religious doctrine above human knowledge. The work celebrates the power of human intellect and creativity, serving as a stark contrast to the medieval focus on divine knowledge. Number 19 is Worker and Kolkhoz Woman, an iconic sculpture created by Vera Mukhina for the 1937 Paris Exposition. This monumental piece features a man and a woman, symbols of the worker and the collective farm, raising a hammer and sickle together in a powerful display of Soviet unity. The sculpture was designed to epitomize the strength and solidarity of the Soviet people under communism, celebrating the industrial and agricultural sectors as the backbone of the revolution. However, the glorified image of labor and collectivism also raised concerns about its ideological overtones. The controversy surrounding Worker and Kolkhoz Woman lies in its use as state-sponsored propaganda. While Mukhina's work is undeniably impressive in scale and technical execution, the image of two heroic, idealized workers raising the communist symbols of the hammer and sickle has been seen by critics as an overly simplistic and forced representation of Soviet ideals. The sculpture's emphasis on collectivism and the glorification of the working class can be interpreted as both a celebration of the Soviet Union's accomplishments and a form of ideological control. In a broader context, the work also speaks to the ways in which art under Stalinism was used to suppress dissent and present a curated image of Soviet success. Number 18 is Fountain by Marcel Duchamp. Arguably one of the most infamous artworks of the 20th century, Fountain is a simple porcelain urinal signed R. Mutt. By presenting a mass-produced object as art, Duchamp challenged traditional notions of art craftsmanship and creativity. The work was immediately rejected by the exhibition organizers, who argued that it was not art. This controversy sparked a heated debate over what could be considered art and helped give rise to the Dada movement, which embraced absurdity and rejected conventional artistic standards. Fountain is often credited with revolutionizing modern art, shifting the focus from technical skill to conceptual ideas. While some continue to dismiss it as a mere prank, others see it as one of the most important and provocative artistic statements of the 20th century. Today, Fountain remains a symbol of artistic rebellion and a cornerstone of conceptual art. Number 17 is The Death of Marat by Jacques-Louis David. This classical painting is a stunning portrayal of the assassination of Jean-Paul Marat, a revolutionary leader during the French Revolution. Marat, depicted in a peaceful, almost saint-like pose in his bath after being stabbed, is shown as a martyr for the revolution. The clean lines and controlled composition add to this sense of calmness, presenting a politically charged moment as a heroic and almost sacred event. David's painting was controversial not just for its subject matter, but for its ideological message. By elevating Marat to the status of a martyr, David was making powerful statements about the French Revolution and its radical ideals. The painting became a symbol of revolutionary zeal, while simultaneously blurring the line between art and propaganda. Its emotional intensity and political implications made it a controversial piece in both artistic and historical context. Number 16, The Scream by Edvard Munch. This iconic painting, with its swirling colors and distorted figure clutching its face in terror, evokes feelings of anxiety and existential dread. When it was first unveiled, the painting's expression of inner turmoil and emotional instability was shocking. Munch's representation of mental anguish and the fragility of human emotion forced viewers to confront uncomfortable psychological truths. What makes The Scream controversial is the way it represents the human psyche in a manner that had rarely been seen in art before. Munch sought to portray universal feelings of alienation and fear, tapping into the emotions that people rarely spoke about openly. The chaotic and exaggerated lines of the work speak to the anxiety of the modern world, making it a striking and controversial critique of the disconnection and isolation felt by many in this rapidly changing society. Number 15 is The Disasters of War by Francisco Goya. This series of etchings depicts the brutalities and atrocities of the Spanish uprising of 1808. Goya's stark, uncompromising images of executions, torture, and human suffering shocked audiences with their raw depictions of war's cruelty. The graphic nature of the works, showing the horror of conflict without any romanticization, made the series both groundbreaking and controversial. The controversy surrounding the disasters of war lies in Goya's unflinching portrayal of violence and suffering. At a time when art was often used to glorify battle and heroism, Goya turned the lens on the brutality of war itself, presenting it as ugly and inhumane. The etchings remain some of the most powerful anti-war statements ever made through art, challenging viewers to confront the horrors of conflict head-on. Number 14 is the National Monument of Scotland, located on Calton Hill in Edinburgh. Often referred to as Scotland's Disgrace, this monument was originally intended to be a grand tribute to the Scottish soldiers who died during the Napoleonic Wars. Modeled after the Pantheon in Athens, the design was ambitious, but the project was left incomplete due to financial difficulties. Today, what stands is an incomplete semicircular ruin, which has become a symbol of national pride mixed with some embarrassment. The National Monument of Scotland is controversial not because of its symbolism, but because of its failed ambition and unfinished state. The incomplete nature of the structure has sparked debate over whether it should have been constructed in the first place or whether it should be completed as originally intended. Some view the monument as a poignant symbol of national aspirations, while others see it as an embarrassing eyesore, representing unfulfilled promises and the inability to complete national projects. Its current form has made it the subject of discussion about the practicality and execution of monumental architecture. Number 13 is The Triumph of Death by Pieter Bruegel the Elder. This haunting and macabre painting depicts a grim procession of death as skeletons marching through a desolate landscape, carrying with them the bodies of the fallen. The work is a chilling commentary on the inevitability of death and the fragility of human life. Bruegel's meticulous detail, combined with the overwhelming sense of hopelessness, gives the painting an unnerving quality that forces the viewer to confront the darkness of mortality. The controversy surrounding The Triumph of Death comes from its portrayal of death and decay. While many Renaissance works focused on ideals of beauty, harmony, and religious transcendence, Bruegel's vision is far darker and more grounded in the harsh realities of life. The apocalyptic nature of the painting, with its desolate landscape and endless march of death, challenged the prevailing views of human existence at the time. Its stark depiction of suffering and despair continues to resonate today, making it one of the most compelling and controversial depictions of death in art history. Number 12 is The Gross Clinic by Thomas Eakins. Painted in 1875, The Gross Clinic is one of the most controversial medical paintings in art history. The large-scale work depicts Dr. Samuel Gross performing surgery in an operating theater surrounded by medical students. Eakins presented a raw look at the reality of surgery, complete with bloodied hands and the patient mid-operation. The painting was shocking to contemporary audiences, who found its graphic detail disturbing and inappropriate for public display. Despite its initial rejection, The Gross Clinic is now regarded as a masterpiece of American realism, praised for its technical brilliance and its unidealized portrayal of the medical profession. The painting remains a powerful testament to both the advances and the brutal realities of 19th century surgery, making it one of the most debated works of its time. Number 11 focuses on Adolf Hitler's early art, particularly his watercolors of architecture and landscapes created in the 1910s and 20s. Despite his ambitions to become a professional artist, Hitler's works were rejected by art academies, and his art was considered technically mediocre and lacking in depth. The controversy surrounding these works comes from the fact that they are tied to the man who would later become the architect of a genocidal regime. While these paintings don't overtly reflect the violence associated with Nazi ideology, they are often viewed through the lens of the man who created them. Critics have noted that Hitler's focus on rigid, classical architectural forms in his art foreshadowed his totalitarian values that he would later promote. On the other hand, some argue that our judgment of his art is clouded by what he later did and that his art should be evaluated independently. Today, his paintings remain controversial not only because of their artistic merit, but because of their connection to a figure whose regime caused unimaginable suffering. These artworks raise uncomfortable questions about whether they should be celebrated or remembered as a chilling reminder of a darker chapter in history. Number 10 is Francis Bacon's Crucifixion, a haunting and violent reimagining of the Christian crucifixion. Bacon's version features an agonized, deformed figure on the cross, surrounded by an abstract, unsettling background. The scene lacks any traditional reverence. Instead, Bacon presents a chaotic, distorted vision of suffering. His use of dark colors, raw emotion, and abstract shapes makes the viewer confront the intensity of the crucifixion in a way that traditional representations avoid. The controversy of crucifixion lies in its brutal, dehumanizing portrayal of Christ's suffering. Bacon, a deeply existential artist, often sought to depict the raw agony of existence, and his vision of the crucifixion does not glorify or sanctify the event. Instead, it strips away the religious iconography, focusing on the visceral, human experience of pain. For many, this interpretation was a direct assault on the sanctity of Christian imagery, making the painting one of the most contentious religious works of the 20th century. Number 9 is The Death of Sardanapalus, painted by Eugène Delacroix. In 1827, this intense and dramatic piece portrays the legendary final moments of the Assyrian king Sardanapalus, who ordered the destruction of his possessions and the death of all of his concubines before taking his own life. The sheer violence and chaos of the scene shocked audiences of the time, and it was considered scandalous for its depiction of uncontrollable passions, excess, and death. The controversy of the death of Sardanapalus lies in its raw depiction of human suffering and destruction. Delacroix's decision to focus on the brutality of the scene, with its swirling bodies and vivid colors, was jarring to 19th century viewers. The painting was seen by some as excessive and indecent, raising questions about the limits of artistic expression. Today, The Death of Sardanapalus remains a powerful explanation of violence and human nature, challenging the viewer to confront the depths of despair and moral decay. Number 8 is the towering Mansu Hill Grand Monument, located in the heart of Pyongyang, North Korea. Unveiled in 1972, this 22-meter-tall bronze statue of Kim Il-sung, the founding leader of North Korea, is a symbol of the supreme power and authority that he held over the nation. One statue shows Kim Il-sung standing with raised right hand, gesturing towards the future of North Korea, symbolizing his vision for the country and his leadership. This monumental sculpture is not only an artistic feat, but also a striking representation of the totalitarian regime that North Korea has built in his image. The statue of Kim Il-sung is controversial for a number of reasons, but perhaps the most significant is its role in reinforcing the cult of personality around the Kim family. Throughout his rule, Kim Il-sung was portrayed as a near-mythical figure, and his image was omnipresent in the country. This statue, along with countless other images of Kim Il-sung, was used to solidify his image as the eternal leader and as a godlike figure to whom the people owed unwavering loyalty. The statue is a constant reminder to North Koreans of the absolute power of the Kim regime, and it is a symbol of the suppression of dissent and the total control that the family has over every aspect of life in the country. The controversy surrounding the statue lies not just in its size and placement, but as its function as an ideological tool. The North Korean government has employed this art to maintain a sense of reverence and obedience towards Kim Il-sung, as well as his successors, including his son Kim Jong-il and grandson Kim Jong-un. The statue of Kim Il-sung becomes both a physical and psychological symbol of the state's dominance over its citizens. The image of a towering leader gazing into the distance becomes an ever-present reminder that the regime's control is absolute, and any challenge to this system is not only sacrilegious, but dangerous. For many, this artwork embodies the dangers of totalitarianism and the manipulation of art to serve as an oppressive agenda. Number 7 is The 3rd of May, 1808, by Francisco Goya. This dramatic and emotional painting depicts the brutal execution of Spanish civilians by French soldiers during the Peninsular War. Goya's stark portrayal of the massacre, with its stark contrast of light and dark, captures the horror and terror of the moment. The image of the unarmed, helpless man facing the firing squad has become one of the most iconic representations of war and its dehumanizing effects. The controversy surrounding the 3rd of May is in part due to Goya's unapologetic depiction of violence. The painting shows not only the physical brutality of the executions, but also the psychological horror of warfare. Its raw portrayal of innocent lives lost in the chaos of war was shocking to viewers, who are used to more sanitized, heroic depictions of battle. Today, it remains a powerful reminder of the horrors of war and a critique of its dehumanizing effects on all involved. Number 6 is The Last Judgment by Michelangelo. Painted on the altar wall of the Sistine Chapel, The Last Judgment depicts the final judgment of humanity by Christ. The work is a massive, overwhelming composition that includes countless figures, each representing a different aspect of the human experience. The sheer scale and detail of the painting make it one of the most ambitious and controversial works in the history of art. The controversy here lies in its dramatic, intense depiction of divine wrath and judgment. The work's portrayal of otherworldly suffering, with bodies writhing in pain and demons dragging souls to eternal torture, was considered highly controversial by some members of the Catholic Church. Its unrelenting focus on the fate of sinners was seen as both terrifying and inappropriate. The painting also raised questions about whether this should be depicted in a place of worship. Today, The Last Judgment remains one of the most powerful expressions of religious drama and art, provoking awe and fear in viewers. Number 5 is a small yet haunting painting by Edvard Manet called Le Suicide. It depicts a man lying lifeless on a bed, a pistol in his hand, with no accompanying narrative or background details. Unlike Manet's more famous works, which often featured vibrant social scenes or portraits, this piece is stark and devoid of context, heightening its emotional impact. The painting is controversial because of its depiction of suicide, an issue that was rarely addressed so directly in 19th century art. The lack of information about the man's identity or motives adds to the unsettling nature of the work. At the time, suicide was a very forbidden subject to discuss in public, and Manet's willingness to confront it in such an unembellished way challenged artistic norms. Today, The Suicide remains a poignant and thought-provoking piece, a testament to Manet's ability to capture raw human experience without sentimentality. Number 4 is The Massacre of the Innocents by Pieter Paul Rubens. Rubens actually painted 2 similar depictions under the same title, but the first is more well-known. This disturbing Baroque masterpiece depicts the biblical massacre ordered by King Herod in an attempt to kill the infant Jesus. The painting shows soldiers brutally slaughtering children, with their desperate mothers pleading for mercy. Rubens' vivid and chaotic composition, with its swirling figures, bleeding bodies, and anguished expressions, create a powerful emotional impact that is impossible to ignore. The raw violence of the scene captures the tragic moment in history with a level of intensity that shocked viewers at the time. The controversy of the Massacre of the Innocents is rooted in the brutal and explicit violence it portrays. While the biblical story itself is one of horror, Rubens took it a step further by emphasizing the chaos and suffering through his highly dynamic painting style. The unsettling combination of innocence and violence stirred emotions of both empathy and outrage in viewers. Critics have debated the ethics of depicting such brutality so vividly, with some arguing that the painting is too graphic, and others praising it for its emotional depth. In any case, The Massacre of the Innocents remains one of the most horrific works of art in the Western canon. Number 3 is The Flagellation of Christ by Caravaggio. Known for his dramatic use of light and shadow, Caravaggio's The Flagellation takes the viewer to the heart of Christ's suffering. Unlike many other representations of this scene, Caravaggio's depiction shows the physical brutality and personal anguish of the moment. The focus is on the stark reality of Christ's suffering, with little attempt to romanticize or beautify the scene. The soldiers are shown with cold detachment, emphasizing the violence and the human nature of those who carried out the act. The controversy of this painting lies in its intense realism and its challenge to traditional religious imagery. Caravaggio's raw portrayal of Christ's torment was unsettling for many viewers at the time, who were accustomed to more idealized depictions of religious suffering. The realism of the figures, especially the tortured Christ, struck some as disrespectful, while others found it to be a profound expression of human emotion. In any case, The Flagellation of Christ is a powerful exploration of violence, power, and faith, and it remains one of the most talked about works of religious art. Number 2, The Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch. This triptych painting is one of the most enigmatic and controversial works in art history. Completed in the late 15th or early 16th century, it depicts a fantastical vision of paradise, earthly pleasures, and eternal punishment. The central panel is filled with surreal imagery of human figures engaging in various activities, and it was considered highly provocative for its time. The right panel portrayed otherworldly punishments, which added to the painting's disturbing nature. Many have debated Bosch's intent, with interpretations ranging from religious moralizing to a celebration of human pleasure. The painting's bizarre, almost nightmarish imagery made it both captivating and unsettling, sparking debates that continue to this day. Number 1 is The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. Da Vinci's portrayal of this biblical scene was radical in its humanization of Christ and his disciples. The psychological depth and emotional intensity of the figures challenged the traditional representation of religious themes, making the painting both revolutionary and controversial. This depiction of Christ's final meal before his betrayal and crucifixion, with its intense focus on human emotion, was groundbreaking for its time. What makes The Last Supper controversial is not just its visual impact, but the way it broke from tradition. Da Vinci rejected the static, formal portrayals of religious subjects, opting instead to show the moment of Christ's announcement with intense drama and human emotion. This new approach, combined with the innovative use of perspective, set the stage for the development of Renaissance art and its shift toward more naturalistic and emotionally engaging representations. From political statements to shocking depictions of violence, religious defiance, and artistic rebellion, these 25 artworks have left an undeniable mark on history. Some challenged authority, others questioned morality, and many redefined the boundaries of artistic expression. While controversy often comes with criticism, it also sparks dialogue, forcing societies to confront uncomfortable truth. These artworks, whether revered or reviled, have shaped the trajectory of art and continue to provoke thought, discussion, and debate. The greatest art is not always the most beautiful or agreeable. Sometimes it's the most unsettling, forcing us to see the world in an entirely new light. If you liked this video, please consider leaving a like and hitting that subscribe button to be notified of more content like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.